Welcome to Zero Knowledge. I'm your host, Anna Rose. In this podcast, we will be exploring the latest in zero-knowledge research and the decentralized web, as well as new paradigms that promise to change the way we interact and transact online. This week, Guillermo and I chat with David Wong, author of the Real-World Cryptography book and a co-founder of zksecurity.xyz, a ZK auditing firm. We chat about his background in maths and what got him interested in cryptography. We then chat about his early work as a security consultant, his time at Facebook, and then at O Labs, where he contributed to the Mina protocol. We cover how zksecurity.xyz came to be and what they aim to do, and then dive into the topic of security in the ZK space, covering auditing techniques, hot takes about where the space might be going, and what threads of research are getting David excited. Now, before we kick off, I want to remind you to check out the ZK Jobs Board this month. With the ZK Summit around the corner, happening on September 20th in London, many of our sponsors have put their jobs up on the ZK Jobs Board. So if you're looking for a new opportunity or job in the field, be sure to check it out. And I hope to see you at the ZK Summit. If you haven't already secured your ticket, be sure to do so. We'll be adding the links to the show notes. Now, Tanya will share a little bit about this week's sponsor.
Aleo is a new Layer 1 blockchain that achieves the programmability of Ethereum, the privacy of Zcash, and the scalability of a rollup. If you're interested in building private applications, then check out Aleo's programming language called Leo. Leo enables non-cryptographers to harness the power of ZKPs to deploy decentralized exchanges, hidden information games, regulated stablecoins, identity products, and more. Aleo's incentivized testnet is now live. Participate as a developer, apply for a grant, or go for a bug bounty. Check out aleo.org/blog for more info. That's aleo.org/blog. You can also find the link in our show notes. So thanks again, Aleo. And now here's our episode.
So today, Guillermo and I are here with David Wong. Welcome, David, to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, Guillermo.
What's up?
So yeah, David, I reached out to you to come on the show. I started to think about having you on as a guest after I had seen this blog post that you made on zksecurity.xyz all about the Nova vulnerability. And even though there had been like a larger paper published about it, I just found it's like such a great resource to not only understand the vulnerability, but also just understand Nova. So yeah, I just saw you doing this and I thought it would be really great to catch up with you. But I also know that we've interacted when you've had other hats, like when you were working at Mina and like all these other times. So yeah, I'm really excited to find out a little bit about the work you've been doing and yeah, just generally your journey here.
Cool. And I'm super excited because I listened to maybe not all your episodes, but most of your episodes. And cool. Yeah, it's amazing that we have this podcast in the field. Yeah.
I will feel bad a little bit about crashing this party because I don't think I was actually invited to this recording until I talked to David, and David was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be on the podcast," and I'm like, "Wow, Anna just rugged me." So it's fine. Like, it's cool.
Can I join this one? I'm happy to have you here, Guillermo. I think this is great.
That's what she says now, but I know she's like, "Oh crap! Like, damn it! I really didn't want him on this one, but it's fine."
Hardly. Actually, yeah, I heard that you had been discussing deep maths, and then I sounded like, to me, Guillermo, I think you're the perfect co-host for this one.
That's a compliment.
There's a compliment.
I think so, yeah.
All right, David, let's kick off with a little intro to you. I think I've been tracking what you've been doing since you worked at Mina, and I knew about like Real World Crypto, the book, but maybe give us a little backstory. Kind of where's your starting point on this journey to ZK security, like all the way to this kind of moment?
I guess I started my career doing like consulting work for like a crypto like shop at a consultancy firm called NCC Group.
Was it cryptography or was it cryptocurrency
cryptography services? And cryptocurrencies were a thing, but I don't think there was that much money at the time. So we're not really looking at cryptocurrency stuff.
Okay.
What year was this?
2015, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
2015,
Makes
2016.
Sense.
And I guess at some point there was even a debate on like cryptography and not cryptocurrency.
Yes.
And if you go on the subreddit of r crypto on Reddit,
they refuse
the first post is like, crypto is not cryptocurrency, and that's my post, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh my God!
And it's actually a website called Crypto is Not Cryptocurrency.
That's amazing. I tried to post once, like an episode we did, but it was a very cryptography focused episode, and I tried to post it there, and I think I got it removed.
Yeah, there's so much spam that it's kind of hard to figure out what's good and what's. But yeah, so I used to be in that camp of like, yeah, what's the point of cryptocurrency, and crypto stands for cryptography, and then I gave up. Some people are still fighting that fight, but I don't think it makes any sense. And I think maybe 4 years in, like we started, like my group started getting more and more cryptocurrency audits, and so I think that's when cryptocurrency started booming. And I think I did a year of cryptocurrency audits, and then I was like, okay, this is the most interesting field. It's actually hard to get a job in cryptography, or at least it used to be hard. And maybe you would get a job at like a boring job at a bank or something like that, and you would spend your life in meetings, or I don't know what people did, but it was really hard to get a good job, right? And cryptocurrencies come, and like cryptography is cool.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. And so I guess at this point I jumped to the Libra project, which was still stealthy at the time.
Did you join Meta then? Were you an external?
Facebook at the time.
Facebook at the time. Oh wow.
Right.
Yeah, I was never at Meta.
Okay.
So Facebook, specifically the Novi team, which was called Calibra at the time. Like it probably doesn't make sense for anyone who didn't follow that whole like Calibra and Libra and Novi and DM and like I don't know how many name changes happened, but that was interesting. So I started doing more like security kind of things. I was the security lead at the project for 2 years.
Cool. Just a quick question there. Did you overlap with Bobbin or with Costas?
Yeah, I was working with Costas since I think he started after me, but I think not too long after me. And Bobbin was there under a different name. And yeah, actually the first time, so at that time I didn't really know about zero-knowledge proofs, but I think I was hearing about Plumo, the Celo projects.
Yeah.
They were using zero-knowledge proof to like fast track like BFT, like epoch changes in BFT.
Kobe was the lead on that. And actually, I worked with him on the trusted setup. That was the first time Kobe and I worked together, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
cool. So actually I tried to get us to do that at Libra and DM. And I think basically every cryptocurrency should have like this kind of a verified like clients. It's like most interesting application, I think, for ZK, for cryptocurrencies. Yeah, so Bobbin was there working on Starks. I had no idea what Starks were, and he actually explained to me what Starks were. And at that time, I remember like understanding everything. Like it was a super nice explanation. And then I forgot everything. And then I asked him to do it again. And of course, he doesn't have time. And but it was like this amazing explanation.
Wow. So you were at Facebook before they changed their name, and then you made a leap out of it, I guess. What pushed you out of it?
So I guess, I don't know if people are going to like that, but like the writing was on the wall, like things were being pushed over. Every month we were going to ship. And I think at the time it was sort of clear that regulations were like going to kill the project. Well, not super clear, but I made a leap of faith. I'm like, okay, I don't think this is going to work out. And I'm still sad about it. I know people hate Facebook and everything, but I don't think it was necessarily like a bad project. And we made a lot of... Actually, it used to be like a much more idealistic project, but because of regulators, we had to like kind of kill a lot of the heart of the project, which was kind of sad. And I don't think many people know that. Like these kind of like a lot of people are very passionate about that project, and the regulator and all these discussions kind of made it more of a corporate thing and less of a cool thing at the time.
It almost sounds like it just got safer and safer and safer, and like those edgy, interesting parts were getting cut off. Because I heard I mean, from Costas and from Bobbin, I also heard just like they speak very highly of their time there and the team that was there. The team that had been assembled was like kind of incredible. And actually you can see that like those folks have gone off to create really amazing things. But at one point they were all together working on the same thing.
Yeah, it's actually kind of sad that we all split in different directions. And I think different people try to recreate. So like Aptos and Mist and Labs were trying to like recreate the groups. But like I was already like at Mina and happy there. And like people wanted to create Mist and Labs on one side. And it was kind of it was too bad that we couldn't like decide all together to leave. And like it was a pretty good time. Yeah.
it's kind of interesting, right? Because a lot of the kind of standard libraries that people use nowadays, some of the best libraries that we have, were actually made for Libra/DM, right?
Yeah.
So one example being Jellyfish is a really fast key value store, KV store.
Yeah, it's used in Penumbra, I believe.
Yes.
At the very least. I don't know who else uses it.
Cool. Okay, now let's talk a bit about your time at Mina. You made the leap. What year was that?
So, okay, I can't tell you that because everything's a blur because of COVID.
Okay.
Every time
sometime during COVID.
That,
okay.
I just remember I did 2 years at Novi, and that's all I remember. And I don't know what year it was, but yeah. And what's interesting is that actually I think I discovered zero-knowledge proof or this kind of advanced zero-knowledge proofs through CODA protocol, which was the name of Mina at the time.
Yeah.
But they changed the name because Costa's company sued them. There's this whole this whole story because it was too close to Corda. Our 3 products. And so when I was at NCC Group, a coworker of mine that's now at Penumbra, Eva, told me to like go to this like meetup, which was like not the launch party of Coda, but they were like, I think they were stealthy before or something like that, and they came up and was like, or they open sourced the code or something like that. And so I went to that meetup while I was still a consultant doing security audits and stuff like that. And I remember being like mind blown that they could like do recursive zero-knowledge proofs. And at the time they had like a browser like demo where like your browser could verify like a blockchain.
Wow.
It was like so insane to me that I remember being mind blown. And so when I wanted to leave the DM project at the time, basically I looked around and I was like, holy shit, this is where I want to work.
Cool.
And so, yeah, basically I reached out to them. They made me an offer. I was like, yes, on the spot.
Wow.
And I think that was the first time I said yes, like as fast as I could. And yeah, I guess I just spent 2 years there because I left like a few months ago to create ZK Security.
And when you were at Mina, you created a number of libraries that I think are still in use, like Kimchi.
I work on Kimchi. I'm not going to take credits for it.
Okay.
It was a group effort.
I just know you presented Kimchi with someone else at ZK Summit 7.
Right, with Joseph.
With Joseph, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was an architect there, and a lot of my work was to try and understand like where we were going and sort of like what was our strategy vis-a-vis of our code base and this ZK app functionality that still hasn't launched, but is doomed to launch very soon. I can't say much about that.
Soon TM.
But it should be very soon. And yeah, so yeah, I worked on Kimchi. I did to be honest, I did a lot of OhCamel, way too much for my taste. It's sort of a functional language, functional programming shop. And so they have very, very good people there because people who like these kind of things are insane.
So why OhCamel? I thought OhCamel was like just Jane Street or something, right?
And I think Isaac originally really loved it, right?
Yeah, team effort. You guys got it. Isaac was at Jane Street, of course.
Oh, I didn't actually know that. Oh, wow.
That's the only reason why anything is in OhCamel, right?
Yeah,
someone worked
assumption.
at Jane Street at some point.
Oh,
right.
No way. But also, tell me if I'm wrong, but I did hear that like there are places in the world where OhCamel is like kind of championed. And I heard France has like this epic OhCamel community. Is this true?
Well, OhCamel is French, right? Like I think it was invented at the INRIA, and it's
okay. Maybe that's
interesting.
They have people working on that full time. And I don't know if there are like serious companies using OhCamel in France specifically, but it definitely like impacted a bunch of people who love this kind of, the language theory and these kind of things.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, okay, Rust was written in OhCamel, right? I don't know if you guys
really
heard about that fun fact.
Rust was originally written in OhCamel.
Right. The
I
first
did not know
part of
this.
Rust was in OhCamel.
The compiler, I didn't know that actually. For some reason, I knew it was like a functional programming language, but I assumed it was Haskell, which is like, like normal functional, terminally functional programming people use, right?
I think so something important at Facebook. So my first PR at Facebook was an OhCamel PR.
Oh my God.
And I don't know why I chose that. And it was on I think the Flow compiler.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe like the Hack type checker was like written in OhCamel. But I think they're moving to Rust and maybe have successfully moved to Rust. So
for quick context, Hack is like a homebrewed version of, I think it's PHP, right? If I recall correctly.
Yeah. But I'm not sure exactly what it is now. I think they forked PHP, and it's like
I hope so.
things.
But it's like it's Facebook's like homebrewed language that they use for like a bunch of internal like web page building and stuff
for
like
Facebook
that.
itself, right? Like Facebook is built in.
I know, because I remember I had to write some hack at some point for some
nice
horrible thing, and I'm sure there's a PR of me in that. Anyways, it's a whole thing. But whatever.
I like it, but I like weird things, so
I
understand.
To each their own.
David, I am now curious though. What language do you prefer now to work in? Like, what is your? So you would have been working in OhCamel at Mina, but would you still prefer that? Is that still kind of where you'd go? Or are you Rust based now? What's going on?
I think I was always, so it's an interesting question, because when you're a consultant, like basically actually now everything is in Rust or Circum or like these kind of things. But back then, like I used to edit, like every pen test would be a different language.
Oh, wow.
So I went through a lot, and I would say Rust is amazing. Rust is the most amazing language, I think, today. And I don't think I'll ever write OhCamel again. Let's say it like that.
Probably.
I'm
gonna get you to try Julia one of these days, and then it'll be great.
I haven't tried it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm open to languages, but
I kind of want to ask you about that though. Like, so because we didn't really talk about sort of your early work that much, but had you studied languages? Did you pick up a lot of this in work?
Yeah, I guess that's like when you're a consultant, it's just you're thrown into like whatever projects, and you have like a few days to like learn a new language usually.
Okay.
That's the dark side of the behind the scene of being a consultant. And so I just sometimes learn the language just for like 2 weeks of pen testing, and
wow,
and then never touch it again. Like that happened a lot.
On that question, actually, is I actually don't really know what your background is. I don't think we ever chatted about it. So prior to doing kind of security and cryptography consulting, what
I did tell you that, maybe you forgot. I told you I used to do math, believe it or not, because I'm bad at math.
That's right. You did tell me that, specifically, but I'm gonna pretend for the sake of this episode that I've never heard of it before.
So you're coming more from math. You didn't study CS, I guess.
No, I didn't study. Yeah, I guess so. I did a Bachelor of Math in part in Canada, actually.
Oh, cool.
And I was deeply depressed doing mathematics.
Oh no,
pure mathematics,
as all mathematicians are. Right. Yeah.
And so I guess that like one summer, I didn't know what to do with my life. I just figured I'm gonna finish my bachelor and like end up under a bridge, or like I had no idea what work meant, or like what people actually do that deserves to be paid money, or
Did you do mathematics at a French institute?
Yeah, French. Actually,
that would contribute to the depression.
Why?
The French mathematicians and mathematics curriculum is a special one. Ooh. It's a special one reserved for a specific circle of hell for people who are into that kind of thing. We can talk about it more later. But anyway, sorry, David.
I wouldn't say the curriculum, but like the way of teaching also in France is like I have a lot of strong opinions on like it's basically going to jail and it's horrible. And my time in Canada was so much better. Like my teachers were so much like anyway, I'm not gonna say anything more because I don't want to make enemies. But okay, where was I? Okay, so I did math, and then I was deeply depressed. And one summer, because this is interesting, so I'll tell that story. I was working at McDonald's making burgers in the kitchen, right? That's how we did it. And I discovered, so Coursera was something new at the time.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first course on Coursera was this Dan Bonnet cryptography 101 thing.
Yes.
Right? So during my breaks or like days where I was off, I would go to the library and I would just follow the cryptography 101 or cryptography 1 course from Dan Bonnet. And I went through that and I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. Like I like computers. I had been like, doing computer stuff forever. And I liked math, but I just didn't like what I was doing. So I was like, this is my escape. I'm just going to do a master in math. So I finished that course, went into a master in the University of Bordeaux. And so everything followed from that. I got an internship at some NCC Group, the consulting firm.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
It's what we've just talked about. This is awesome. Wow. I'm so glad we actually dug into that, because what a crazy connection point to also what Dan does now. And like, you work now in his world in a lot of ways. That's so cool.
Yeah. So I'm so, Dan Bonnet for me is, and I remember sending him an email like, hey, can I do a PhD with you? And he actually responded, and back in the days, and I can't remember what he said. But he was not a no.
It was not a no. Okay, good.
So wait, sorry, I guess Coursera. Yeah, this was like what, 2010, 2011?
I think later than that, no? 2012 maybe.
Maybe 2012. Yeah, it's interesting because funnily enough, that's the first course that I also saw at Coursera, but the first course I actually took at Coursera was from École Polytechnique, and it was their real analysis course.
Oh, which course?
Their functional analysis course. Specifically.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's a terribly difficult course for some godforsaken reason. That was it exposed me to the French mathematics system.
The people that survive this system are really good.
Yeah.
But it's hard to survive, basically.
Damn.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, David, at what point does writing a book, which became Real World Crypto, the book that as I understand, is now published in multiple languages around the world. When did that idea pop into your mind? Like, and were you doing this on the side? And maybe talk a little bit about this book.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know if this is interesting, but like I've always liked writing, and so like one of my first successful, maybe not first successful, but the first time I ended up in the newspaper was during my bachelor. And I heard that idea of like, if you write 3 pages a day, then you can like check like a checkbox, and then it motivates you to keep writing, because you see like a chain, like a blockchain, of like days you've written.
Motivation chain. Yeah,
exactly. It's a thing, right? Like chains. And so there was a website to do that, but you had to pay. So I made my own application, and I started using it to write like every day, like 3 pages a day. And then I published it online because I was like, this is so useful for me, so I'm going to publish it. And people have, like a huge amount of people in France have been using it. People have written books just using the app.
Wow.
And so I've always like loved writing. I've always wanted to like write books. I actually wrote one book before that's a novel, and that's unpublished. But I was already in this kind of mindset.
Gosh.
It's a
When will you wait? Is it just sitting in your, like, as a transcript on a bookshelf?
It's on a computer somewhere.
Sorry, you're not in the 19th century. I got it.
Yeah, I wanted to buy this kind of a, how do you call that?
Typewriter?
Typewriter, but never did. And so, I've always liked writing. I've always had a blog. I've went through many blogs, and I guess the most recent blog that usually people are more familiar with is the Cryptology blog. Cryptology was a French spelling, and which I started during my master. So I've been blogging for, almost 10 years, I guess. Why did I write a book from that? So I always wanted to write a book on cryptography because I just like teaching what I learn. And I think we can all agree that reading papers is hard, and it's always like very painful. And so if you find like some resource that someone wrote, it's like nice because you can understand things better. And so learning cryptography, I run into a lot of things I couldn't understand myself. And so I by learning them, I wanted to like teach them after. And so that's sort of when I had the idea of writing a book. The real click also came when I was teaching a course so I used to teach a cryptography course at Black Hat.
Okay.
Nice.
The conference. And someone came to me one day and they were like, oh, can you give me like a recommendation for like a course or whatever? And I told them to check the Dan Bonnet course, and they told me it's too theoretical. Like, that's not for me.
Okay.
Interesting.
And so that's when I understood that I could do something that would be very useful for a lot of people.
Interesting. Wow.
So the book was essentially an outgrowth of kind of your blog and like its associated writings. I actually haven't read the book. It's on my like Amazon
Shame on you.
cart. I know. I'm sorry. Oh, you
Nice.
do?
I've
Okay.
started that actually, but
Is it essentially, does it take your blog and kind of formalize it and like make it a narrative? Like, what does it actually do? Also, I have another question about the blog itself, but we can get to that afterwards.
Oh yeah, so the book is basically two parts. The first part is the ingredients, and the second part is the recipes. That's how I call the thing in the book.
Okay.
And ingredients is just basically I reuse a lot of my blog posts, but most of it is novel because I realized that I actually didn't know a lot of the things I was supposed to write on. So I had to spend the time to like learn it, and so I could really teach it.
That's awesome.
And so yeah, first part is like, you know, basic ingredients that are pretty common in cryptography. So like hash functions, authentication tags, max encryption, authenticated encryption, key exchanges, signatures, all these things. And the second part is what do you do with that? So it's like SSL and TLS, so session encryption, secure messaging with Signal. So yeah, end-to-end encryption. What else do I talk about? So I talk about ZK snarks and MPC and FHE.
Wow.
I talk about post-quantum cryptography. So all sorts of like more advanced topics. And yeah, what else do I... Okay. I should have the thing in front of me, but I can
what
cheat.
else did I talk
but
about?
stuff like that. Stuff like that.
Nice. I mean, it's interesting. Like I've seen a lot of people actually tweeting as they're going through it. Like I think it's become quite the textbook that people will potentially go to first. But this is not really for ZK only, folks. This is really for just general kind of blockchain topics, right? If you want to know the technology, the cryptography that underlines a lot of that stuff, this would potentially be a good starting point.
Yeah, and actually my slogan at the time was for our blockchain world was, this is the first cryptography book with a chapter on cryptocurrencies.
Oh, neat.
So it's actually, if you're into cryptocurrency, it's actually a good book to read if you want to get more into the cryptography of it, because it actually talks about the BFT consensus protocols and these kind of things.
Nice.
I also have here's the second set of questions about this is, it even if you want to write, like whatever, you have your little blockchain of achieved days that you've written 3 pages. Like, why write about cryptography? Why write about this specific thing? Like, why not write, you were interested, you wrote a novel earlier, like why not do short stories, or something? Like, why was this the idea? Like,
yeah, I guess I just like teaching, and it's easier to write about what you do, I guess. So I did, cryptography stuff. And so I was like, I'm writing this blog and I'm explaining a lot of the concepts and people really like them. I'm making these videos, people seem to like them. And I seem to like add value to people's life. So I want to do more of that. I think if I write a book, it's going to be a book that doesn't really exist. And so it sounds like a good idea.
You saw the need when that person had come up to you. So like someone did sort of say like, there's the things that are out there are not satisfying what we're looking for.
Right. So yeah, I think I really saw the need, and even to this day, I think there's no other book like that is like in between the theoretical and the very practical.
That's very cool. I have one slight side question that you sort of talk about. You built your own version of this 3 pages a day. Is it just like an open source app or something? What is it?
It's not open source, but I guess you can use it, but it's in French.
Oh, well, I speak French, so I could maybe use it.
Oh yeah, and as long as you can register, you can use it. Right?
Okay, cool. What's it called?
Yeah, it's called Threepagesfr. I wish I could like encrypt what people write. That's sort of like the primary feature that people request. It's like, oh, whatever I write is like goes in a database and it's not really private. So it would be cool if I could do that, but I honestly haven't had the time to do this.
You could make it private with a zero knowledge proof, maybe? Maybe not.
Maybe there's something
maybe there's something else that would be better suited, actually.
You could probably just make it private by having it on your laptop or something. I feel like people have made crude versions of this elsewhere.
Yeah, it'd be good to use cryptography in that project, because totally. I did that before I was really into cryptography, and
that's so neat.
But yeah, lack of time. Yeah.
So, but getting quickly back to the blog post, and I assume the book as well, but I unfortunately haven't read it again. So one thing I actually really appreciate about your blog post, and it's very impressive that you could just write 3 pages every day and have them come out this good on average. I guess it happens after a lot of writing, is that it's actually very clear. So, you say, oh, it's only for people who aren't like too theoretical. And I would deem myself as like terminally theory oriented, right? Like there's kind of no escape for me at this point.
Right.
But I actually still really appreciate your blog. It's very good. It's very well written. It's very clear in ways that I will say almost no, if any, paper actually is.
Thanks.
And you're very good at kind of this conversion, this idea of like taking, 60 pages of something that could definitely be shrunken down to about 5, right? And have all the same content, right? And then explaining it even more cleanly than those 5 pages. I was like, okay, like, what do you do that? Like, what is the process? Do you go take a 60-page paper and like a bottle of wine and sit in a corner of the room until you...
That's what I used to do.
Oh, that's what I used to do? Okay, good. I'm glad we're all in agreement, at least on that one.
Drinking is always a good like influence on the writing. I think a lot of writers are, do these kind of things too. But for technical writing, it's a different process. I would say the deepest secret, like double quote secret, is that good writing is just a writing that has been rewritten a number of times. And I would say the same for like good code. I think good code is code that has been refactored many times. Nobody writes well the first time. Like that's what I do. I just write my drafts. It's shitty. Nobody should see that. I would be very ashamed if anybody sees that. And I sleep on it. And the next day I look at it, I cry a bit and I rewrite it and rinse and repeat,
How long did it take you to write the book?
It took me a bit more than 2 years to write that book. And I was slow, I guess.
And when did it get published, actually? When did it come out?
I don't know, because it was COVID.
During COVID. I think it was
2021
something, maybe.
It must have been a year, maybe, or a year or 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been translated. I noticed you were tweeting this. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's so weird because I didn't know about that. And basically people send me these things and that's how I learn.
That's awesome.
But I think it's in German, in Polish, in Japanese, in Chinese. I'm so sad that it's not in French. Yet. But hopefully one day.
Yeah. But wait, how does that happen? Like, do you have a publisher? Is the publisher doing it? Like, how is this?
I have no idea. Yeah, I have a publisher. It's Manning.
Okay.
And I don't know how to do it. It's just magical.
Wow. They're localizing it. This is really cool. I like that it's like happening sort of just like out there.
Actually, I should say that. So I have a box of German real-world cryptography and a box of Korean real-world cryptography. And so I'll probably warn people so that I can sort of give them out, because I don't know what to do with them at SBC.
Cool.
So if I get a copy of the book, can I get it signed?
Can you speak German or Korean? Is that
no.
German or Korean?
Unfortunately,
I have a US version. I can give you the English one. And of course
fine. I'll take it. No, I'll buy it just to support the author.
All right.
Cool. Is there anything you think folks who are starting that book or who want to use that book should know about how to like use this textbook or how they should approach it?
No, I would say just start it. Just start reading and you'll get it. And just ask me questions if you don't get it.
On Twitter.
Yeah, just ask me things on Twitter.
Do you need to have a math or CS background, do you think?
So I would say no. So that's sort of why I wrote the book. I tried to like use minimal amount of equations. Some chapters I didn't really have a choice, especially like when I get more into public key cryptography. But I tried to stay away from writing equations and try to stay away from theory. I do talk about how the theory side see things, but it's more of like usually in small boxes that you can like ignore if this is not interesting to you.
Cool.
So yeah, no prep needed, I would say.
Nice. So let's move on then to your latest project, zksecurity.xyz. As mentioned, the way that I first saw it was through the blog that is attached to this project. But then obviously I clicked in and then saw, oh, wow, David's doing some sort of auditing firm or it's dealing now with ZK security. So yeah, share a little bit about what it is and how it came to be.
Oh yeah. So I guess me, Brandon and Gregor from O1 Labs, so working in Mina, both of them are working on the higher level in the stack of the Mina stack. And so they're talking to developers. They're seeing developers use ZK apps or try to write ZK apps. They're seeing a lot of bugs, and they're telling me, David, I think there's a market for that. Like we're people write bugs in smart contracts, like in Ethereum and whatever, and there's a whole market of auditing firms doing work there, we think there's going to be a need for smart contracts, but like ZK smart contracts. And so we sort of like took the bets and decided, to create this thing, ZK security. And I would say that indeed, after doing a number of jobs, we've realized that very good people will write pretty bad bugs. And basically nobody can write it. This new paradigm of like constraints is actually very hard to figure out. And I mean, even good people who know what they're doing will make pretty big mistakes there. So it's been quite interesting to see people writing circuits. Today, if we look at the different platforms for writing ZK apps that exists, most of them are not launched. And so I think what we do today is going to be very different from a year from now, when Mina has launched, Alio has launched, Aztec has launched, Snarknet is more of a thing, and so on.
Interesting. Yeah, when you said that, you're sort of talking about the ZK apps. So it comes originally from this idea of seeing people building ZK apps, I guess, in the testnet phase. But that's not the deep cryptography part, right? Like, I guess when you're doing ZK security auditing today, you're usually dealing with like the protocol builders who are actually using the ZK in creating these platforms where you can use ZK apps. All those teams you listed, would you see yourself as a potential auditor of their code base? Or are you sort of waiting to like be more for the things that are built on top?
Yeah, so our bet was that smart contract security is a big thing. ZK smart contract security is going to be a big thing, or ZK app security is going to be a big thing.
Yeah.
But since a lot of these projects haven't really come out, we've actually been auditing a lot of things lower down the stacks.
Got it.
So like proof systems or very low level, like, manual R1CS writings or these kind of things. But I think tomorrow or, someday in the future, I think this is, the proof systems are going to ossify, solidify, and we're going to see more user apps and more bugs or more work for us on this layer. Yeah.
As an auditor of those systems, though, like, is it hard for an auditor to learn all of those different languages to be able to audit all of those things? Or do you think there needs to be like some sort of specialization?
I would say finding bugs is always finding bugs. And so in the higher level, higher layers, I think it's not going to be, you're not going to have like a deep proof system background to do that work. That's what I think. Hopefully that's going to work because I have to train a generation of consultants for that.
Yeah.
But for writing like low level constraints and custom gates or very low level constraint things, I think it helps to understand things at a lower level. I think without that understanding, it's going to be hard to audit or to write these kind of things. And so, yeah, I think today we're in a good spot because I don't think many people like us are interested in doing audits. So we're very few people with this kind of background, with this kind of cryptography or my co-founders like worked on like Snarky.js and these kind of compilers for and languages for writing ZK apps.
Yeah.
So people who do that usually are spending their time building these kind of things. And so there's not many people who have this kind of expertise to audit things.
There are a few firms coming out. Like I did an episode with the folks from Veradice, John, and like they're coming, I think, more from smart contract auditing, now doing ZK auditing, not so much from like the deep cryptography to now being an auditor, which it sounds like your path is more like that. They were talking about fuzzers and formal verification, other like tools where you just kind of like, there's like types of bugs that happen enough times that there's like specific things that they're looking for. Do you have stuff like that too? Or are you doing much more of like a kind of, I'm just sort of picturing like, very careful through each line kind of audit?
So, okay, that's a very good question, actually, because I have strong opinions on that.
Okay.
So I guess formal verification, fuzzing, all of these tools are like things that are known by consultants. It's nothing new, and we're just like translating or transporting these tools to like this new paradigm and like these new frameworks. From my experience, and I think a lot of consultants would agree with me, although I don't want to speak for everyone, but manual work is still very needed, very much needed. Maybe there's a future where we can throw code at an AI and they'll find bugs for us. And actually, I believe in that. So I'm happy if there's a future like that. But for now, I think manual work is very important. That's how most bugs are found. And fuzzers. Okay, let's talk about fuzzers and formal verification. So formal verification usually is more like static analysis, like you don't really run the code. And fuzzers are like dynamic analysis, so you run the code and you're trying to find bugs just by running the code. Fuzzers, I think, are relatively recent in a sense where like we had a theory, but people didn't really come up with like nice implementations. And I think AFL was like the first big implementation, and at the time, C programs were a big thing. So like in C, you have a lot of memory corruption bugs. And so fuzzers become very useful because you can find all these, you're trying to write to memory, but you shouldn't write to memory there, or you're trying to read from memory, but you shouldn't. And C is like a horrible language, so it allows you to do that. But now that we have Rust, fuzzing is not that useful anymore. I still write fuzzers, but I would say that usually I will find crashes at best, but you never find anything really interesting. And maybe for constraints, you might be able to find more like completeness issues, where sometimes you have some constraints that are supposed to like encode some program, and the fuzzer will find some inputs that don't work. You cannot prove them. You cannot create a proof, and so you have some completeness issue. But usually you don't need to write a fuzzer to find them. That's what I've seen in practice. So I believe in them. You can find low-hanging fruits very quickly with them. But depending on how much time you have, sometimes it's not worth the effort because it's not always a good way to find good bugs.
Also, the kind of bug that feels like it'll start coming up more and more, which it's a bit harder conceptually with kind of transparent contracts like Solidity, is like under constraining things. Normally when you do things, you build an object, right? And then like that object is constructed and therefore has like some set of properties that are interesting. Here it's kind of the opposite, right? Like ZK requires me in order to build such an object, I actually have to say what things are both like reasonable and not reasonable, right? By constraining it in a variety of ways, by adding certain constraints. And I feel like this is the kind of bug that is, it's easy to say because it's obviously you can construct objects that are like not reasonable in like a lot of ways, but I feel like it's going to be way more common in ZK, right? Where it's like, oh crap, I accidentally forgot a constraint to check that like something is, I mean, it does happen still, but something is like non-negative in my specific way I'm identifying a number, right? And I feel like fuzzers would probably be very useful for that, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like you don't have that opinion. So I'm curious, like...
Yeah, I would say I don't think fuzzers are going to be very useful for soundness issues. So when I think of soundness issues, it's like finding inputs that should not work, but are working. And so finding these inputs usually is hard because you have to construct them manually. Not necessarily all the time, but in very interesting cases and for very interesting bugs, you need to compute the inverse of like another number or like something like that. And then that will work, but it's not supposed to work. And so a fuzzer is like kind of a dumb program that will just throw like random numbers at the program, and it's not gonna do these kind of these more clever things. And so I think we're gonna be limited with fuzzers.
Interesting.
In that episode I did with John from Veradice, we talked also about this middle ground between fuzzer and formal verification, which was like static analyzer. I think that's what it was called. Would you also put that in the same category as fuzzer, or do you think it's more useful?
So this is interesting because that's where my strong opinion is.
Oh.
But I will, okay, I'm gonna shock everyone, but I'll say that like in security, like formal verification is more of a buzzword, and it's usually a good way to like hire researchers or get grants or attract people or have interesting things to work on because like these are interesting problems. But usually they're not that useful. They're usually pretty noisy, or they don't really find anything useful. I've actually never found anything useful using static analysis. I will always run them, And I think most consultants will like look at what tool, like what static analysis tool they have whenever they look at a project. So like linters is a form of static analysis. So it's easy to run a linter. Or you have more advanced ones. And the more advanced ones that can find interesting things are usually way more involved. And so if you want to use them, you're going to spend way too much time. And this is not time you have usually. That being said, I've seen people on projects that are paid to just formally write formal specifications. And so these, I believe, are interesting exercises because it gives you another insight on the protocol that you're writing or creating, because it forces you to like write it in like in a different way. And so by doing that, sometimes you might find bugs or you might find issues and these kind of things, but it's mostly the exercise of writing that, you know, in a different language or something like that, that I think is interesting, not necessarily the running the tool to find bugs. That being said, I have a blog post coming where I do use tag analysis, which is a form of static analysis, to find these kind of bugs that I call boomerang bugs in under constraint programs. So there is some hope somewhere, but it's very, there's so much friction to use these tools. Yeah.
David, you just kind of used formal verification and static analysis sort of together in that last bit. So which one are you critical of more? Just the way you said that, I was sort of, I had thought of them as like distinct, but are they kind of connected?
Yeah, so static analysis is just tools that don't run the code. So they will just either get information from the compiler or like just, you know, just look at the code and do like very naive things. Does this code contain the function eval? And we know that eval is a bad function. So, you know, just like greping like naively in the code. So you can do a lot of things like that. Formal verification for me is just like one like subfield of like static analysis.
Got it. Okay.
So like, for example, linters are static analysis tools. And to me, they are amazing. Like everybody should use linters. If you use Rust, you should run Clippy on your projects, for example. If you don't, you're crazy. What are you doing? Specifically, I was my strong opinion is on formal verification and
I see.
And how it's far from being usable in practice.
And yet, speccing it out or creating the formally verified spec is useful.
Right. In the same way that writing a specification is useful, like an English, you know, purely English specification, because it forces you to put ideas that you have in your head on paper, and by doing that you might realize that something is kind of wrong or
so it's not like using a formal verification tool on existing code, but rather the writing of it, like almost the first part of it is the useful part, just like trying to put it in the format that you would need in order to run formal verification is the part where you actually catch a lot of stuff.
It's also most of the work, to be fair, right? Like most of the work of formal verification is specifying the problem that you're attempting to solve. Interesting. Right. And this, you know, it's kind of funny. This brings us a little bit back to writing. It's like, what's the best way of clarifying your own thoughts is writing them down in a formal way. And then like having a thing that says, okay, here from point A to point B, like here is everything that I want to, you know, have this thing satisfy or not satisfy. And indeed, that's like 99% of the work of writing is actually making it clean and reasonable, much more than it is like the high level idea.
Yeah, so it's kind of like if you might think you don't need to write a proof, but by writing a proof, you might actually realize that whatever your theorem is like not correct, or
that's right,
or your protocol is broken.
So kind of revisiting the fact that you're currently not auditing smart contracts, ZK smart contracts on top of these platforms, but actually the underlying stuff. We already mentioned one class of bugs or problems, which is a circuit being under constraint. Are there other types of bugs that you're looking for in sort of that low level auditing, or is it just that one?
I would say the two bugs are basically this. It's like completeness bugs. It's like you want to try to do something, but you cannot because you badly constrain something. Or soundness bug. You can do something, but you should really not be able to do this thing.
What does that mean? Like it's happening, but it's not happening because of the logic?
Yeah, so I guess the easiest example is like, let's say you want to like add two values together in a circuit, And what you can do is that you can create a constraint that adds the two values together, and that would work, right? Because the third value, the results, the prover can try to put anything there, but it's not going to work because there's a constraint that's preventing you from doing that. You're not going to be able to create a proof. But if you under constrain your circuit, you might forget to create that constraint that says A plus B must be equal to C. So A plus B minus C equals 0, right? Same thing. If you forget to write that, then the prover can put any value they want into the C bucket. And so then you don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the circuits because they can do whatever they want. And you have to think about that all the time. Like whatever values are in the circuits can be anything the prover wants them to be unless you have a constraint, right? So if you don't constrain something, then it can be anything. The prover can choose whatever they want.
In both cases here, so like a soundness bug would be because there's a constraint missing, and a completeness bug would also be because a different kind of constraint is missing.
Or a completeness bug could be you have too many constraints, and one of the constraints is actually preventing you from, like it's saying, B should not be equal to 0, when actually you want B to be equal to 0. You know,
interesting.
It's a valid input.
And just to remind everyone, like maybe in the completeness part, why would a team create an under-constrained system or circuit? Like there's obviously some sort of trade-off that they're going for. Like they're getting more efficiency or something. Yeah. Why would you have that happen? Why not just add a ton of constraints? Like why not just use all of them all the time?
Yeah, I'd say two things. So you touched on the first one. It's like when you're looking to optimize things, you can create bugs. The other thing is human error, right? Like human error is the source of most bugs. And so in this case, it's hard, like some of these constraints are hard to write. The one thing I can think of, which is like one of the trendy subjects, and actually I'm one of the architects for the Z Prize, one of the Z Prize category this year, and one of them is going to be on that. And so this problem is called non-native arithmetic. And so sometimes you want to do stuff in a circuit, and a circuit is instantiated on a field, but you want to do addition or multiplication or whatever in another field. And so it's kind of hard to think about that, right? Like you're doing things modulo a number P, but you're trying to do operations modulo Q, like a different number. And so most everybody is going to be like brain fucked at some point when they try to think about that. And it's actually I think every project that has implemented these things have had bugs. Wow. Like Aztec had like a spec, and they say like, oh, we had an under constraint here. Mina had a bug also at some point there. I'm sure everybody else must have had a bug.
Do you think, I don't know if you've thought about this, and this was a topic kind of a few months ago in our chat, we were talking a lot about disclosures and appropriate disclosures. How, like, if you're an auditor who's working with a client, obviously there's like a very clear way that these things are communicated. But as an auditor, are you also looking into systems that you're not working on? What happens if you find something? What do you do?
Okay, this is a great question. Like, at some point in my life as a consultant, I wanted to like do a talk just on that topic. It's kind of it's such a weird, like, so security is such a weird field. It has like these kind of perverse like incentives sometimes, where like if you have a client and they're paying you to find bugs, and you tell them, here are the bugs, I think that's fine. Or if you're an academic, like you don't have to be working for clients. You could just be doing like pure research. Yeah. Like you're gonna find bugs, and it's like, what do you do with these bugs? And there's this whole like, as an academic, or even if you're a consultant, you need to create a buzz. You need to give a name to your attack. So it's gonna be the attack of the day. Everybody's gonna be mentioning the heartbeat or like whatever. Yeah. I don't know what's the latest. Actually, there was one recently. But basically, there's this game that people are playing, and sometimes I stop and think, and I'm like, are we still the good guys? And are we doing, like, is it actually good to
break stuff?
Well, it's specifically in these moments where you find a bug and you cannot warn everybody about that bug. There's going to be like devices that are going to have that bug. They're not going to be patched in time.
Oh, yeah.
And so the other side of the argument is that, well, if we don't do that, the bad guys are going to do that. And the bad guys are going to exploit that. So we have to, like, disclose it to everybody We need to let people know, and there is no perfect way to do it. You know, people will exploit that. The bad guys will have some time to exploit it, but this is the best outcome. Is it really a good thing? Is like researching bugs and like breaking systems, is it actually a good thing? Because I think most bugs actually never go exploited. Like some bugs are dormant like forever, basically.
Yeah, it's a bit of the kind of accelerationist philosophy that, I mean, at least I think that's what some folks who are into the hacking and breaking is, the sense that like, well, it was going to break eventually, so we might as well break it now. And if we have a path to be ethical at somewhat, let's do it that way. Or there's others who are just like, if it's going to break anyway, someone's going to get the bounty on this. And not even, I don't mean like official bounty, like they'll get the payload, they'll get the money that you can steal. So I might as well do it. Like that's definitely, and it is, I wonder if the way that that's rationalized is, well, this is helping push everything forward anyway, because it was going to break eventually.
It's like, who knows? I can understand both sides of the argument, but I think the side that says this is good, this is objectively good, you know, I think it's more fine-grained. Like the reality is more
nuanced.
Yeah, the ethics of security have always been, and I think will continue to be quite interesting, right? It's it's a funny arms race, moral quandaries. You know, it's sometimes easy to point at a mirror and be like, "Yeah, are you sure you're getting up in the morning for the right thing?" You know,
yeah.
But so it goes. Right. If there were a perfect answer, I don't think we'd be having this discussion in the first place. So
I wonder, like, how do you even think, David, that we could even get that conversation going? Like, who should be in that?
I think it's still early, right? Like ZK security is like a very, very early field. Most of the ZK applications are not born yet. And like, I think we'll get many examples of what we just talked, but I don't think I've seen an example so far in ZK, or maybe I'm not thinking enough.
There was a big Plonk one, but they were able to disclose that. This is the one that Trail of Bits found. I think they found something. Yeah, that's a really interesting case study because it shows like they did disclose it to the most valuable networks, I think, in advance. But there were so many teams that had been using it that they might not even had known who all of them were. And it was really hard to connect with all of them. And that was sort of like, that's, I think, like a real world version of what we could imagine happening if someone's trying to do it ethically.
Yeah, that's a good example, that Frozen Heart. Yeah, it's hard to warn everybody. Yeah, that's for sure. Like you don't know who else is using that protocol in the wrong way.
Totally.
Yeah, we see a lot of, I guess I was dealing with that the other day, but like there's a lot of threshold signature issues also, and there's many people reusing the same schemes or libraries, and it's like basically a hell to like contact everybody, and we have these 90 days disclosure because I don't know, somebody thought it was a good idea to say 90 days is the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody's running around. I've rewarned everybody. Like, is there any other project that we should warn? Has everybody fixed the bug?
Totally.
These kind of things.
I mean, the most famous one, I think, still in our space was the Zcash one. In their case, though, it was the only people who could figure it out, they think, were in the room, were the people who built this thing, because there were so few people in the world who understood these systems. Yeah. And it was Ariel Gabizan who found it, and they kept it even from the rest of the company. They kept it in a group of 3 people who knew what was happening, and they had to like strategize all these things to make sure that they could do this upgrade without it being known. Because had they made it known,
they didn't disclose
it, but it was internal. But yeah, there was risk to the users, I guess, during that time.
There was risk, right? They could have shut down the protocol, but I'm not saying that they should have done it, right? Yeah. Like, I'm not saying they should have. But so this is interesting because at the time we were auditing Zcash at NCC Group, and Strad had told me, I'm very curious of the results. And he made this face when he told me that. And it was weird.
I don't think Strad knew. I don't think Strad was part of the inner circle. I mean, he should speak on this, but yeah, as far as I know.
Okay, interesting. Because at the time, that's when I started thinking, did they insert bugs just to see if we're doing our job correctly or something? And then I started thinking if like clients can do that in journal and this kind of things.
That's funny.
So he did have a weird reaction. I remember that. I should ask him.
Yeah, actually, I shouldn't speak for them at all on that front. But as far as I remember, it was Ariel Shanbo and Zuko, who knew. And maybe there was like one other, maybe like the legal team or something, but it was like a very small group. I don't think the general engineering team knew.
It's such a difficult problem, right?
I know.
It's just like, it's crazy to me, right? Because like even the mere knowledge that there exists a bug,
I know,
is like so useful in finding one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes it just so much easier, which is insane.
Oh yeah. Oh, so okay. I don't know if I should say that, but I know some people that ended up exploiting that bug on like forks of Zcash because they didn't fix it fast enough.
Although that was communicated at that point, so I feel like
I don't even know what these forks are, but yeah.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I think as a case study, actually, I think what we'll try for this episode, we'll dig up, I did an episode with Shanbo where he goes through that timeline in a lot of detail. So that might actually be something interesting for folks to listen to if they want to hear that story accurately. And my apologies, by the way, if I'm also misrepresenting it, because I think we did this, it was episode 76. So, and we're close to episode 300 now. So yeah, it's been a while. Anyway.
Right.
Cool.
Impressed on your memory, though. Do you remember 76?
Well,
or
I
did
just
you
know
actually just look it up?
I know it because it was one of the most popular episodes ever. So
Holy
it's like
crap,
it pops
okay.
up on our kind of best of lists all the time. That's why I know that one. It was a really good one. It was Sean, I think it was the first time he had spoken about this issue after it had happened, but it was already like 9 months later or so. So he digested it, but it was very cool to get a chance to talk to him about it.
I think that's the only place where he mentioned that it was Ariel that found it, right? Like trying to understand the protocol, if I remember the episode.
So crazy. Anyway, so David, what are the new sort of research topics? I know like you're focused now on the auditing stuff, but I'm imagining just given what you've described of your background and the fact that you tend to be reading and writing, what are the research topics outside of security and auditing that you're interested in?
Outside of security and auditing, well, are we still talking about zero knowledge or?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
well, I mean,
it was
what kind of music are you into now? No.
Taylor Swift, of course.
Oh, of course.
Okay, zero knowledge stuff. I'm fascinated with the folding work and this like line of folding with Protostar and Protogalaxy and is Protogalaxy the last one for now? Because there's a new one every week. So
there's
it's
no
kind of
Lasso and something.
So Lasso and Jolt are like not folding things, but they're like, so I guess there is like
Max,
the folding.
yes.
There's the folding branch and the lookup branch, and Lasso and Jolt looks amazing also. So I'm digging in the Lasso Jolt branch also right now and looking at in Spark and Hyrax, HYRAX, Hyrax. So this sounds like really interesting protocol and to me, maybe this is an interesting, strong opinion also, but it sounds like, I'm wondering if this is the death of Starks actually that we're witnessing. I know we've talked about that before, Guillermo.
That's crazy. Yeah. I did not. Why? Because is it because Snarks become Starks?
No, I think it's just that like Starks are quite limited because of the way they use hash functions and these kind of things. And the advances that we're seeing in the other side are such important breakthroughs that I think we're gonna get to that point. If it's not happening, I don't know if we're going in that direction. But I don't want to get anyone upset. But I'm if it's happening, I'll be the first one to say it. Then
wow,
we're living history.
Yeah, I've never heard that. That's wild, though.
That's a hot take.
If that was the case, in a weird way, I feel like it would be. I mean, there's just been so much mind share around Snarks. There's been so many groups who've championed it, so many teams who've used it and added to it. So it's not like completely out of mind that could be the case, right? That like just with that much brain power focused on this particular system, that it would like somehow go past it. But yeah, I wonder if it's just like testament to open sourceness from the beginning. Starks are now more open source, but they didn't really start that way. Yeah,
if I would have to guess, I would say it's mostly that Starks are limited due to using hash functions, and eventually this is a pretty big limiting factor.
You don't think that you could engineer around that and research breakthrough around that?
I actually do.
You do? Okay. Ooh, hot take. Okay. Hot take.
The hot take is not around Starks as we know them now, TM, using like standard hash functions, but I do think there is like very interesting work to be done in that area.
But it would need the mind share.
Yeah, you could construct hash functions that are more structured. than like SHA-256, for example. And
that's an interesting
that fact. Yeah, it's an interesting set of things. So anyways, I don't know, maybe some listeners will scoop us before.
But I think people have been trying to solve that for a while. So
wow.
Yeah. No, this is also true. It's my suspicion is if it was easy, it probably would have been done, right? But I wouldn't trumpet the death of them yet, but I would trumpet the death of them maybe as we currently see it. Maybe.
Interesting.
Right.
Wow.
And by the way, I don't want to say that, like, you know, there's still many projects that use Starks, and that doesn't mean that, you know, these projects are not good or anything. But, you know, breakthroughs, I think, are going to continue piling up on that side. And I think we're going to see more and more interesting designs.
And actually, maybe a note there, because I think what you're saying too is like there's teams and systems that are built on Starks or Snarks, but they're usually built actually, if they're in the building phase and implementation, they're already built on like systems that were developed a few years ago and had sort of ossified and like now that those are secure enough, or if people feel comfortable enough that they're going to implement it. What you're talking about is like the cutting edge,
right?
Like not tested yet research style stuff.
And you can't like just like shut down your product and say, guys, we're just gonna rewrite everything from scratch because this new cool thing. Like you're always in a like whatever you do, you're always gonna see new cool stuff coming up.
I know.
It doesn't mean you need to like restart your project, of course.
I often ask teams that are building sort of like more like protocol level or even like application level, like how did you make your choice? At what point do you have to just say, I'm going to go with this because I feel safe with it? And David, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing with us sort of all of the work you've been doing around communication, education, auditing, security. This is so exciting. And building, actually. I shouldn't forget that you've also built a lot of systems that people are using. Really glad we got a chance to speak with you.
Yeah, and thanks again. Yeah, this was... I really wanted to come here, but I was waiting for the invitation.
Cool.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, and thank you. You know, we covered a lot of ground, but it's always entertaining chatting.
Cool. So I want to say thank you to the podcast team, Henrik, Rachel, and Tanya, and to our listeners. Thanks for listening.